The ballroom glittered for his 40th birthday. Hundreds of guests. I'd planned every detail, but when I moved to take the seat beside him, his eyes went cold. "This isn't your place." He motioned to another woman. "Someone richer." He forgot what I do for a living. "I find dirty money. Tonight, I planned this party not to celebrate him, but to end him. My name is Lauren Archer. I am 33 years old, and I am the head of fraud investigation at Vantage Trace Analytics. My job is to find the truth hidden inside numbers. When a bank suspects a shell corporation is washing cartel money, or a hedge fund thinks a rival is using offshore accounts to manipulate stock prices, they call me. I am the person who can look at a single transaction, a single discrepancy down to half a decimal point, and trace it back to the lie. I find dirty money. It is what I am good at. Tonight was supposed to be about a different set of numbers. Tonight was Ethan's 40th birthday. The Grand Imperial Ballroom at the Riversend Hotel does not just glitter, it suffocates you with opulence. The chandeliers were dripping crystals that looked like frozen tears, casting a light so bright it felt artificial, surgical. 200 guests, maybe more, circulated through the room. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, peonies, and the metallic tang of ambition. These were not just friends. They were assets. Senators, venture capitalists, real estate tycoons, and the kind of bankers I investigated Monday through Friday. They were all here for Ethan Archer, my husband, the brilliant CEO, the financial visionary. I, of course, had planned it all. I did one last walkthrough, my heels sinking into the plush carpet. On the surface, I was the supportive wife, the meticulous planner. I had approved the wine, a Cabernet that cost more per bottle than my first car payment. I had tasted the canapés. I had personally overseen the seating chart, a complex piece of social engineering. My gaze flicked to the technical booth. The audio was crisp. The massive, 30-foot screens behind the stage were ready. The MC, a local news anchor Ethan admired, was reviewing his cue cards. I had double-checked the slide presentation myself just an hour before, a tribute to Ethan's journey. Everything was in place. Every flower, every musical cue, every perfectly timed moment was a domino I had set. Outwardly, it was a celebration. Inwardly, it was a war room, and I was ensuring my battle plan, the one I had been drafting for weeks, was ready to execute. The call for dinner came, a low, polite chime. Guests drifted to their assigned tables. I watched Ethan, the center of gravity, laughing as he clapped a politician on the back. He looked incredible. His suit was custom-made, a dark navy that made his eyes look sharper. He caught my eye and smiled, a brilliant, camera-ready flash of white teeth. It was a smile he used for investors, for the press. It used to be for me. I moved toward the head table, the long, elevated table draped in white silk, facing the entire room. Table 1. My seat was right next to his, the empty chair, waiting for the wife. I had sat in that chair for 10 years. I reached it. I put my hand on the back of the high-backed chair, the silk cool beneath my fingers. I started to pull it out. "That isn't your place." His voice was low, for my ears only. He was still smiling that public smile, not even looking at me directly. He was looking out at the crowd, nodding at someone. I froze. The noise of the room, the clinking glasses, the murmur of 200 conversations seemed to rush away, leaving a humming silence in my ears. I must have misheard. My brain, the same one that could process 50,000 lines of code for a single error, refused to compute. I stared at the side of his face. "What did you say?" I asked, my own voice a whisper. He turned to me then. The smile vanished. It was not a slow fade. It was a switch being flipped. His eyes, the ones I had looked into on our wedding day, were flat, glacial. "This is not your place, Lauren," he repeated, his words precise, like an incision. "Go sit at one of the guest tables. Table 12, I think, with the junior partners." My breath hitched. I could feel my pulse in my throat. A frantic bird. This was not happening. Not here. Not in front of everyone I had spent a decade building a life with, before I could form a word, before I could even breathe. He turned away from me. He looked to his other side, where a woman was approaching. Vanessa Kingsley. I knew her instantly. Co-founder of Kingsley Ventures. Tall, elegant in a way that screamed old money, with hair so dark it looked like ink. She was the one bankrolling his latest expansion, the one whose name kept appearing on his calendar at odd hours, in cities we did not do business in. Ethan's face lit up, and this time the smile was genuine. It reached his eyes. It was the smile I missed. He stood up, took her hand, and pulled her toward the chair. My chair. He spoke, and this time, he was not quiet. This time, his voice carried, loud enough for our entire table, loud enough for the tables nearby, to hear clearly. "Vanessa, thank God you're here," he said, his voice booming with false charm. "Sit next to me. This is where you deserve to be." Vanessa laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves like broken glass. She slid into the seat, her emerald green dress pooling on the silk. She glanced up at me, still standing there like a statue, and her smile was a masterpiece of polite condescension, a look that said, "You are an irrelevance." A small sound, a choked laugh, came from further down the table. I saw her, Margaret, Ethan's mother, her hand covering her mouth, but her eyes were glittering with triumph. Beside her, Ethan's sister, Chloe, shot me a look. It was a disgusting cocktail of pity and undisguised, thrilled amusement. Finally, her eyes said, "The help is being put in her place." The room had noticed. Of course they had. This was not a subtle reassigning of seats. This was a public execution. Conversations did not just pause. They died. Eyebrows were raised. A few people, the polite ones, tried to look away, but their eyes were magnets, flicking back to me, to Vanessa, to Ethan, hungry for the next move in this sudden, brutal play. My eyes scanned the vast, glittering expanse of the ballroom. I found them, at the very back of the room, near the swinging doors to the kitchen, at a table that was practically in the hallway. Table 24, my family, my mother, Janice, her face pale, my brother, Logan, who was already clenching his fists, my Aunt Ruth, looking confused and hurt. They had all driven 3 hours to be here, and they were all watching. They had just witnessed me, their Lauren, the one who had made it, be publicly dismissed on the stage of her own life. A wave of heat washed over me. It was so intense I thought I might be sick. It started in my stomach, a roiling knot of pure, uncut humiliation, and it rose up my throat, burning like acid, and right behind it, something else, something cold, and sharp, and powerful. Rage. A clean, clarifying rage. I am not the kind of woman who cries in a bathroom and then goes home. I smoothed the front of my black silk dress. I took one long, slow breath, pulling the air deep into my lungs, steadying my hands. I looked directly at Ethan. He was already turned back to Vanessa, his hand on her arm, laughing at something she said. I waited. He must have felt my gaze, because he glanced back, his expression annoyed. "Why are you still here?" I gave him a smile. It was not a real smile. It was the smile I gave a high-priced lawyer who was trying to tell me that a $200 million wire transfer to a Cayman account was a clerical error. It was a smile that said, "I see you." "You're right," I said, my voice perfectly level, caring just enough. "You just keep going." And I turned. I did not rush. I did not look back at my family, though I wanted to. Each step was deliberate. I walked away from the light of the head table. I moved past table 2, table 3. I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on my back, a physical pressure. I became a shadow moving through an opulent, glittering room, the jazz quartet, sensing a lull, picked up the tempo, trying to fill the awkward, tearing silence I had left behind. They all thought I was leaving. They thought I was defeated. They were wrong. My mind was no longer in the ballroom. It was in my office. It was clicking open the encrypted folders, the firewall-protected files. The evidence I had spent the last 6 months of my marriage collecting. One file meticulously labeled Archer, Ethan, and another, just as thick, labeled Kingsley, Vanessa. Ethan had just made his opening statement. Now, it was my turn. We met 5 years ago. It was at the Riversend Financial Strategy Summit, held in this very hotel. He was Ethan Archer, the dynamic young CEO of Archer Point Capital, a fintech company everyone was watching. I was just Lauren, a senior analyst who had been invited to speak on a panel about digital-era fraud. My topic was, Following the Data: How Transparency is the New Security. Ethan found me after my presentation. He was magnetic. It was not just that he was handsome, though he was, with that sharp jawline and the kind of hair that always looked perfect. It was his energy. He was ambitious in a way that vibrated off him. He told me my speech was revolutionary. "You get it, Lauren," he said, holding his champagne flute but barely drinking. "Financial transparency, that is the bedrock. It is what I am building Archer Point on." He spoke my language. He talked about ethics, about building a system that was clean, where trust was earned through data. I was a professional skeptic, paid to believe no one, but I believed him. I was drawn to his belief that our values aligned. He was building the system. I was protecting it. Our first 3 years were good. I will not lie about that. The data has to be complete. We bought a house in the suburbs with a big kitchen flooded with morning light. We had coffee together every morning before heading into the city. We would argue about the market, about new regulations. He loved my mind. "You have the most dangerous mind I have ever met. Lore," he would say, kissing my forehead. "Thank God you're on my team." It felt like a true partnership. Equals. He was building his empire, and I was rising fast at Vantage Trace. I became head of fraud, the youngest one in the company's history. I was the one the big banks called when $1 billion went missing. I was the one who could see the pattern in the noise. The noise at home started quietly, a low hum, easy to ignore. It began about 2 years ago, when Archer Point started its Series B funding round. I would glance at his quarterly projections, a habit from our early days, and notice things, small things. "Ethan, this consulting fee to a holding company seems high," I remember asking one Sunday. Laptops open at our kitchen island. $100,000. The contract does not seem to support that level of advisory. He laughed. He did not even look up from his own screen. "You're being too suspicious, Lore. It is just an advance for a new platform integration. You spend all day looking for criminals. You're starting to see them everywhere." He called me suspicious. Me. The woman he used to call his in-house lie detector. It was the first time he used my job against me, turning my greatest strength into a domestic flaw, a sign of paranoia. Then, about 18 months ago, her name appeared. Kingsley Ventures. I saw it on a credit card statement he had left on the counter. Not a corporate card, his personal one, a charge for a strategy dinner at Per Se in New York, $4,000. And then, a few weeks later, a wire transfer from his personal brokerage account, a consulting fee of $50,000. It was an anomaly. It did not match any known contract or company expenditure. It was sloppy. When I asked him, his guard went up. "It is just a deal I have not had time to tell you about. Honey," he said, all easy charm. "Vanessa Kingsley is brilliant. She's looking at funding our next round. It's complicated. Do not worry your head about it. Do not worry your head about it." At my desk at Vantage Trace, I was drowning in complexity. That same week, I was untangling a web of 34 shell corporations being used by a Russian oligarch to buy luxury real estate in Miami. I was tracking microtransactions across 3 continents. I was coordinating with the FBI and 2 European regulatory bodies. I was not just worrying my head about it, I was blowing the case wide open, and my bosses were nominating me for industry awards. But at home, I was just a wife who was too suspicious. I was being gaslit, told the data I was seeing with my own eyes was not real, that I was just imagining the discrepancy. The other signs piled up, insidiously. He started going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. A man who used to hate cardio. He bought new suits, sleeker, more expensive, Italian. He got a new phone, the latest model, and when I asked for the new password to sync our family calendar, he brushed me off. It is a new corporate security policy. Lore, biometrics only. You understand. I understood. I just did not understand why the policy applied to his personal phone. Then came the investor trips. They were constant. Pitching the new platform, he would say, to Singapore, to London, to a tech retreat in Aspen. Vanessa Kingsley always seemed to be at the same events. I would see her name tagged in photos on financial news sites, standing 2 people away from Ethan, then 1 person away, then, eventually, right next to him, his family, of course, encouraged it. Last Thanksgiving, Margaret cornered me by the fireplace. She held her wine glass, looking me up and down. My dress was from a department store, not couture. You know, Lauren, she said, her voice dripping with insincere concern. Ethan is a rocket ship. He is moving to a different level. He deserves a woman who understands his scale, someone who can keep up. She looked right at me, her smile tight. The message was clear. I was ordinary. I was the ground crew, and her son was the astronaut, heading for the stars, with a different kind of co-pilot. I did what I was trained to do. I became an investigator in my own home. I did not confront. I did not cry. I observed. I documented. I noted the dates he came home late. I cross-referenced the flight itineraries in his deleted email folder with the Instagram posts from Vanessa's private account, which was not, in fact, private to someone who knew how to look. I noted the restaurant receipts for 2, paid for with a credit card I did not recognize. I logged every lie, every deflection, every time he looked at me and said, "I love you," while his eyes were already somewhere else. My profession teaches one thing above all: you never make a move without sufficient, irrefutable evidence. You do not show your hand when you only have a single card. You wait, you accumulate. You build the case, piece by painful piece, until the narrative is so tight, so overwhelmingly backed by facts, that the target has no way out. You wait until you have the entire story. I live by unmasking liars. Yet, for 2 years, I had let the biggest one I had ever met sleep right next to me, share my home, and use my trust as his shield. It was time I stopped working for free. The automatic doors of the ballroom slid shut behind me, silencing the music and the laughter. I was in the concrete chill of the hotel's parking garage. The air was cold, biting, and I could see my breath, a small white cloud that dissolved in the dim fluorescent light, far away. I could feel the thud of the jazz quartet's bass, a dull, repetitive vibration through the floor. This was the moment of choice. This was the scene where the script Ethan had written for me ended. The humiliated wife flees the stage. I could get in my car. The keys were cold and heavy in my small clutch. I could drive home to our silent, empty house in the suburbs, open a bottle of wine, and let the humiliation soak into me until I drowned in it. I could wait for him to come home at 3 in the morning, smelling of Vanessa's perfume and expensive whiskey, ready to tell me I was overly sensitive and had misunderstood the situation. I could let him gaslight me one more time. If I left, I would lose control of the narrative. He would tell the story. Lauren had a breakdown. She is just so stressed from work. She ruined my big night. He would tell that to his mother, to his investors, and, eventually, he would even convince himself it was true. But I am an investigator. I do not walk away from a scene. I secure it, and I am the person who controls the narrative. That is what I do. I find the truth, I package it, and I present it. Ethan's mistake, his fatal, arrogant mistake, was thinking this was just about the affair. That was the sloppy, human part. The real crime, the one I had been tracking for the last 6 months, was the one he thought he had hidden from me. It started with that $50,000 consulting fee to Kingsley Ventures. I had seen on his statement. It was an anomaly, a thread. I pulled it. The entire rotten tapestry came apart in my hands. Ethan and Vanessa were not just having an affair. They were running a sophisticated scheme to artificially inflate the value of Archer Point Capital. They were using a complex web of offshore funds and shell corporations to create the appearance of massive growth, pumping the stock's private value before dumping it on the market in an IPO that would make them billionaires and leave the real investors holding a worthless bag. He thought I was just his wife. He forgot I was the head of fraud at Vantage Trace. He forgot that I find dirty money for a living. I did not break the law. I walked right up to the line, but I never crossed it. I used the sandbox environment on my Vantage Trace terminal, running our company's most powerful analytical models against publicly available market data, shipping registries, and corporate filings. I traced the trading patterns. I mapped the shell companies. I found the accounts in the Caymans, and I found the emails, the ones where they were not talking about romantic dinners, but about how to mask this advisory fee, and using the Greyline Holdings account to move the money. I stood between a concrete pillar and my black sedan, and I pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. The humiliation was gone, replaced by a cold, clean focus. This was not a domestic dispute. This was a case. I speed-dialed number 1. "Maya," I said, as soon as she picked up. "Lauren, oh my God. It is 9:30. Is it happening? Did he do it? Maya Ortiz, my best friend since law school, and now the most feared financial crime attorney in Riversend." "He did it," I said, my voice flat. "Publicly." He gave her my seat at the head table, in front of everyone. There was a sharp, furious intake of breath. "That absolute bastard. Okay, it is done. The whistleblower packet was filed digitally with the FSB at 5 p.m. It is time-stamped and in their system. It is anonymous for now, but it is locked in." "Good. I am going in. I will call you when I am on the other side." "Lauren, destroy him. That is the plan." I hung up. I dialed number 2, a secure number I had memorized. "Yes." The voice was curt, professional. "Nathan, it is Lauren Archer. Are you in position?" "Nathan Cole, senior investigator for the Financial Supervisory Board, the FSB. We had worked a case together 2 years prior, took down a hedge fund manager who thought he was smarter than everyone. Nathan hated arrogance, and he hated fraud. We are sitting in an unmarked van 3 blocks from the hotel. Ms. Archer," he said. "Are the targets present?" "Ethan Archer and Vanessa Kingsley are both at the head table," I said, "along with, I might add, 2 directors from North Haven Trust who I suspect are facilitating the wires. It is a target-rich environment." "Jesus," he muttered. "You sure you want to pull this pin once we move? It is over. I have the warrants for Archer Point and his home office ready to sign." He just tried to publicly discard me. Nathan, he was setting me up to be the fall guy. He forged my signature on 2 of the offshore accounts. "Yes, I am sure. I am going in. I need you to wait for my signal." "What is the signal?" "You will know it when you see it. I am broadcasting this. I need 30 minutes. Nathan, I need you to give me 30 minutes from now to lock them in that room." A pause. "30 minutes," he said. "Then we are coming in. Signal or not. Good luck." He hung up. I dialed number 3, my brother. "Logan." "Where are you?" "Lore, are you okay? Where did you go?" I was about to go up there and tear his head off. "No, do not move. I need you. Take out your phone." "What?" "Take out your phone and start recording. Point it at the head table. Get Ethan, get Vanessa, get his mother, then get the main screens. Do not stop recording. Do not cut. Make sure it is saving directly to the cloud account I set up for you. Do you understand me?" Logan. "Lore, what is going on? You are scaring me." "Logan, please, just trust me. I need a witness. I need an angle that no one else controls. I need you to film everything, from now until I tell you to stop." He was silent for a second. "Okay, I am doing it. It is on. Be safe. Lore. I ended the call. The legal, the law, the witness. My team was in place. I opened my final app, a simple black screen with a single, white icon. It was a secure encryption key I had designed myself. I had spent the last week with the Tribute to Ethan video file his HR department had lovingly compiled. It was full of pictures of him as a boy, him graduating college, him opening his first office, pictures of our wedding. I had taken that file, and I had embedded my own files within it, my data, the flowcharts showing the money moving from Archer Point to Greyline Holdings and back to Kingsley Ventures, the screenshots of the inflated asset reports, the scanned copies of the wire transfers, the emails. It was all encrypted, hidden inside the benign video file, waiting for a single command. I pressed my thumb to the screen. The icon pulsed. Decrypting. A moment later, ready. My presentation was now synced to the technical booth laptop, the one connected to the 30-foot-high screens in the ballroom. All I had to do was get to the podium. I slipped the phone back into my clutch. I looked at my reflection in the darkened glass of the elevator doors. The woman looking back was not a victim. Her eyes were cold. Her makeup was perfect, and she was, for the first time in months, entirely in control. I looked back through the glass doors, across the lobby, into the glittering ballroom. I could see their silhouettes. Ethan and Vanessa, heads bent close together, laughing. They were toasting him, his success, his power. He told me this was not my place. I pressed the elevator button. "Okay," I whispered to the empty, cold garage. "If this is not my place, I will just have to change the stage." I walked back into the ballroom. The doors slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss, and the wall of noise, the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses hit me again. A few heads turned. I saw the surprise. They thought I had left, the crying wife making her pathetic exit. I ignored them and walked, not toward the back table where my family sat in stunned silence, but along the edge of the room, toward the small, raised platform for the audiovisual technician. He was busy queuing up the next piece of music. The MC, that polished news anchor, tapped his microphone. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we finish our appetizers, it is time for the main event. Please help me welcome to the stage the man of the hour, the visionary founder of Archer Point Capital, Ethan Archer." A polite, then enthusiastic, round of applause started. Ethan, at the head table, dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin. He saw me then, a shadow by the tech booth. I watched him falter. His smile, the one he was wearing for Vanessa, cracked for a millisecond. He was confused. Then, just as quickly, the PR mask snapped back into place. He gave me a tight, annoyed little nod. He thought I had come back to sit quietly at table 12, to cooperate, to keep up appearances. He thought I was just a domestic problem he could manage later. But first, the MC boomed, reading from his card, "We have a very special presentation. Ethan's journey has been a remarkable one, and to celebrate it, his wonderful wife, Lauren, has prepared a special video tribute. Lauren." He gestured vaguely in my direction. More applause, this time lighter, more curious. Ethan looked relieved. Of course, a loving video from his wife. It would smooth over the awkwardness he had just created. It would make him look magnanimous. And me, forgiving. He settled back in his chair, proprietary and smug, one hand resting on the back of Vanessa's chair. He was ready to be adored. I nodded to the technician. "Run the file labeled Ethan's 40th, Final." He hit the button. The main lights in the ballroom dimmed. The two massive 30-foot screens on either side of the stage lit up. The music swelled. The score I had personally selected, something moving, orchestral, full of hope. It began exactly as they expected. The first images were beautiful, nostalgic, a picture of a young Ethan, barely 20, graduating from college, a grainy photo of him in his first, tiny office, just a desk and a laptop, a shot of him ringing the bell at a minor stock exchange, then a picture from our wedding. We were laughing. confetti in our hair, the picture of a perfect partnership. I had kept that in. It was important for the setup. I needed them to feel comfortable. I needed to establish the baseline of the life he was projecting. I watched the head table. Ethan was beaming. He leaned over and whispered something to Vanessa, who smiled and put her hand on his forearm. His mother, Margaret, was dabbing the corner of her eye with a napkin, her face a mask of maternal pride. The room was silent, captivated. The video continued. Early successes, team photos, positive press clippings. The music swelled to its first crescendo. Then, as a slide of Ethan cutting a ribbon faded, the music did not change, but the image did. It was not a picture, it was a spreadsheet. It was simple, clean, and projected 30 feet high. A list of wire transfers, date, amount, originating account, receiving account. The room did not react at first. They were confused. Was this part of the design, then? A second column appeared. Consulting fees, invoiced, and a third, consulting fees, paid, and on that third column, a single name, repeated over and over, highlighted in a stark, clinical red, Kingsley Ventures. The music was still playing that beautiful soaring score. I heard the first sound. It was not a gasp. It was a low, confused murmur that started at the tables filled with investors. Men who had put millions into Archer Point. Their company names were on that spreadsheet. 2. Under originating account, on the screen, an arrow appeared. It drew a clean line from a $2 million advisory fee from Archer Point. Through a shell corporation, I had found Grayline Holdings and landed directly in a column labeled Fee, Kingsley, personal brokerage account. "What is this?" Ethan said. Not to anyone in particular. He was not shouting yet. He was just confused. "Turn it off," he said, louder. The slide changed. Now, it was a screenshot of an email, from Ethan's official Archer Point account to Vanessa's private email. Subject masking the payment. The body of the email was simple. "How do we hide this? It is too big for the quarterly. Use the offshore account." A collective gasp. This time, it was audible. The murmuring stopped. The sound of a fork clattering onto a plate was like a gunshot in the sudden, dead silence. Ethan shot out of his chair. "Turn it off!" he roared, pointing at the tech booth. "At the MC. What the hell is this? Stop the video now." The MC fumbled with his microphone, looking terrified. The technician, wide-eyed, looked at me. I had already put my hand on the control console, locking his access. I picked up the secondary microphone. I clicked it on. The small pop echoed through the room. "It is all right, everyone," I said. My voice was calm. It was the same voice I used in boardrooms. Clear, steady, and full of absolute authority. 200 heads swiveled toward me. Ethan froze, halfway to the stage, his face a mask of disbelief and gathering fury. Vanessa looked like she had been struck by lightning, her face white, her eyes fixed on the screen. "You said tonight was about honoring your journey, Ethan," I said, my voice broadcasting to every corner of the room. "You said it was about transparency and your scale. Let's honor the truth completely." The slide changed again. This time, it was a scanned document, a contract for risk assessment services between Archer Point Capital and a company in the Cayman Islands. It was a one-page, boilerplate fake. And at the bottom, Ethan's familiar, arrogant signature, dated 3 months ago. I heard Margaret's voice, a sharp, horrified whisper to the man beside her. "Lauren, what is she doing?" Her proud, teary smile was gone, frozen into a rictus of horror. She finally understood. This was not a mistake. Vanessa was trying to recover. She was trying to form a smile, to look amused, as if this was all a terrible, jealous joke. But her hand was shaking so badly she had to put her wine glass down. Her composure broke completely as the next slide came up. It was her turn. An email from her to Ethan. "If your wife asks about the transfers, just say it's an event deposit or something. She trusts you. She'll believe it." The room was a tomb. The only sound was the low hum of the projectors and my own breathing, steady in the microphone. I looked across the expanse, past the tables of shocked faces, the investors who were now looking at their phones, the politicians suddenly realizing they were in the same room as a public detonation. I looked right at my husband. His face was no longer angry. It was white with a dawning, animal panic. "You said this wasn't my place, Ethan," I said into the microphone, my voice echoing in the silence. "You were right. So I'm going to make this the only place where you can't hide from the truth anymore." I picked up the laser pointer I had left on the tech console, a small, silver pen. I clicked it, and a sharp, red dot appeared on the 30-foot-high screen, right on the name Greyline Holdings. "Let's move on to the mechanics of the operation," I said, my voice as cool and clipped as if I were in a boardroom, not a ballroom. "For those of you who are not financial crime investigators, let me simplify what you are looking at. This is not just a case of bad accounting. This is a classic pump and dump, executed with your money." The red dot moved. The slide advanced to a flowchart I had built myself. It was simple, elegant, and devastating. "It works like this," I explained, the red dot tracing the lines of power. "Mr. Archer, using Archer Point Capital, which is funded by many of you here tonight, pretends to buy data analysis services from a company called Greyline Holdings." I clicked. The slide zoomed in on Greyline's incorporation papers from the Cayman Islands. "A company, I should add, that has no employees and no physical office. It is a post office box. Archer Point pays Greyline, let's say $10 million. The red dot landed on the wire transfer. Then, Greyline, being a very generous company, immediately turns around and pays Kingsley Ventures, that is, Ms. Kingsley's fund, a consulting fee for $9,900,000. I clicked again. A new slide. A personal bank statement. "And finally," I continued, "Ms. Kingsley's fund pays Mr. Archer, personally, a success fee for his brilliant advisory work. The money has been successfully laundered, washed clean of its origins. It just looks like a successful investment. But it is not. It is theft. It is your money. Gentlemen, just returned to him in a different envelope." A wave of sickness and fury rolled through the room. I could see two men at table 5, both major VCs, looking at each other in horror. They were checking their own quarterly reports on their phones. "But a scheme this large needs help," I said, letting a note of academic curiosity enter my voice. "You cannot move this much money, this fast, without a bank looking the other way." The red dot danced to the corner of the wire transfer forms. "This is where it gets truly interesting. All of these high-risk, multi-million-dollar transfers, all originating from shell companies, were all processed by one bank, North Haven Trust." I let the name hang in the air. I did not have to find them. Everyone in finance in this city knew who the North Haven directors were. I watched as, at table 3, two men, Mr. Harris and Mr. Davies, both went as white as the tablecloth. They were Ethan's honored guests. They were also his enablers. "It is fascinating, is it not?" I mused, as if posing a theory to my team, how these non-compliant, deeply suspicious transactions, all well over the $10,000 reporting limit, sailed through North Haven's world-class control system over and over again. One has to wonder if that is just institutional sloppiness, or if someone, perhaps someone in this very room, was deliberately holding the door open for a fee. Harris and Davies were frozen. The senators at their table were slowly, deliberately, pushing their chairs back, creating physical distance. The social contamination was beginning. You bitch!" Ethan roared. The mask was gone. This was the real man. He lunged, not for me, but for the stage, for the tech booth, to make it stop. "Turn it off. Someone unplug it." He never made it. From the back of the room, near table 24, a large figure moved into the aisle. My brother, Logan. He was 6'3", built like the former college athlete he was, and he just stood there, his phone still held high, recording. He did not say a word. He just blocked Ethan's path. Ethan, blinded by rage, tried to push past him. "Get out of my way, you idiot." "I would not, Mr. Archer." The voice was cold. It came from one of the investors, a man who had pledged $50 million to Ethan's last round. He and another man stood up and grabbed Ethan by the arms. It was not a violent act. It was a cold, corporate seizure. "Let her finish," the investor said, his voice deadly quiet. "We want to hear the rest." Ethan was trapped, held by the very men he had been defrauding, filmed by the brother of the wife he had just humiliated. I clicked the remote. The most important slide of all appeared. "But this, everyone, is the part you really need to understand," I said, my voice dropping. "Because this is not just about greed, it is about a different level of betrayal. Ethan is not just a thief, he is a coward." The slide was titled, in stark black letters, "The Legal Shield." You see, a man as smart as Ethan Archer always builds in a fail-safe, a fall guy. He knew that if this web of shell companies was ever untangled, the person whose name was on the account, the person who signed the incorporation papers for Grayline Holdings, would be the first one to go to prison. I let the words sink in. He needed someone to be the authorized signatory, someone with a clean background, a sterling reputation, someone whose name on the documents would not raise any immediate flags, someone who, when the whole thing collapsed, the FSB would look at as the mastermind. I looked out at the room, at my mother's horrified face, at Margaret's look of disbelief. He chose me. The sound that left the room was not a gasp. It was a groan, a collective, physical sound of disgust. This was no longer a white-collar crime. It was a personal, intimate violation. They finally understood. He was not just cheating on me. He was setting me up to take the fall for his entire criminal enterprise. "Of course," I continued, clicking to the final piece of evidence. He could not ask me to sign it, because I, of all people, would know what it was. So he had to do it himself. On the screen, 2 images appeared, side by side. On the left, Lauren Archer, specimen signature, passport. On the right, Lauren Archer, signature, Grayline Holdings Incorporation. "This," I said, using the laser to circle my real signature, "is my name, and this," the dot moved to the forgery, "is his attempt. You will note, for any of you in banking, the loop on the L is too high, and the cross on the A is hesitant. It is a crude fake. Any first-year teller would flag it." I paused, and my eyes flicked, just for a second, to the North Haven Trust table. Unless they were specifically instructed not to. I turned off the laser pointer and set it down. My job was done. I investigate financial crime for a living. I thought, the rage so cold, it was almost peaceful. Unfortunately for Ethan, he forgot what my job is. The slide on the screen changed one last time, to the image I had scheduled to close the loop. It was a glossy press photo from an investment conference in Dubai 2 months ago. Ethan and Vanessa, arm in arm, his head bent toward her, both of them laughing, the very picture of a power couple. The caption on the photo simply read, "The future of fintech." I looked at Ethan, who was now standing limp, his arms released by the investors, who had stepped back from him as if he were contagious. "This," I said, my voice echoing, my hand gesturing to the screen, "is the person he chose to sit beside him. This is the partnership he valued." I turned my gaze from the screen to his face. As for me, he told me I did not belong in that chair. He said this was not my place. I took a breath, holding the gaze of every single person in that room. Tonight, I am just taking my place, on the side of the truth. The room was no longer a ballroom. It was a vacuum. The silence was absolute, a heavy pressurized thing that sucked all the air and laughter out of the space. The final image, that glossy photo of Ethan and Vanessa, hung on the screens, a 30-foot-tall monument to their arrogance. Then, the vacuum broke. It was not a stampede. It was quieter, more lethal. At table 2, a senator, A man who had been laughing with Ethan just 1 hour ago, slowly, almost imperceptibly, pushed his chair back. He stood, put his napkin on the table, and without looking at anyone, walked calmly toward the exit, his phone already to his ear. His wife followed, her face a mask of polite, rigid horror. That was the first domino. At table 5, the two venture capitalists who had been checking their phones were now both standing. They were not leaving. They were walking, in tandem, toward the North Haven Trust table. I could not hear their words, but their faces were rigid with a cold, controlled fury. The two North Haven directors, Harris and Davies, looked like they were about to be physically ill. A new sound entered the room, the digital click of a dozen smartphone cameras. The other guests, the ones with less to lose, the plus ones and the junior partners, had their phones out. This was not just a scene. It was content. It was a live stream. It was a text to a rival bank. "You will not believe what is happening at the Archer party." The story was already loose, spreading through the city's financial nervous system like a virus, faster than any of us could control. "Lauren." My mother's voice, sharp with panic. I turned my head. She was on her feet at table 24, her hands clenched. She was starting to move toward me, to run. A mother about to shield her child from the blast. Logan's arm shot out, catching her around the waist. "Mom, no, stop. He's ruined. My mother was crying. "Let me go to her." "No." Logan's voice was firm. His eyes locked on me, his camera still up. "Let her finish. This is her room. This is her fight." Then, a new figure was in front of me. Not my mother. Margaret Archer. She marched right up to the tech booth, her face pinched with a fury that felt ancient. She did not whisper. She hissed, loud enough for the first 3 tables to hear. "What have you done? You have shamed this family. You have ruined your husband. In public, this is a disgrace." I looked at her, the woman who had sneered at my department store dress, who had told me I was not to scale. The adrenaline was so clean, so cold. I felt no anger at all, only clarity. "No, Margaret," I said, my voice still on the microphone, carrying my words to every corner of the room. She flinched. Hearing her name, not her title. I had never called her Margaret before. "I am not shaming this family. I am just making the truth public. Your son, the man you are protecting, built this family's name on forged signatures and stolen money. My signature, my name. This is all a lie," a new voice shrieked. It was Vanessa. She had finally found her footing. She was striding toward the stage, trying to grab the MC's abandoned microphone. She was trying to spin it, to save herself. "This is a domestic dispute. She's a jealous, unstable wife. She's doctored these documents." She tried to smile, that brilliant, condescending smile. "Lauren is unwell. She is misunderstanding internal documents. These files are complex. They've clearly been taken out of context, probably cut and pasted to..." "Then why?" A new voice cut through hers, and this one carried the weight of a billion-dollar portfolio. It was Arthur Stevenson, the investor who had held Ethan's arm. He was an older man, silver-haired, and he did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "Why, Ms. Kingsley," he continued, "did I just find the exact same advisory file number from your slide in my own quarterly report from Archer Point, the one you billed me for last month?" Vanessa stopped. All the air went out of her. She had no answer. She had just been corroborated by her own victim. I watched the head table. Chloe, Ethan's sister, was sitting perfectly still. She had not moved. She was not looking at Ethan. She was looking at her hands. I saw her face. She was not shocked. She was remembering. She was remembering the late-night calls, the sudden trips, the whispers, the strange men in expensive suits who would meet Ethan at the house when he thought no one was home. For the first time, I saw it. Chloe was not on his side. She was just on the side. And that was a victory. Then, from the middle of the room, a man stood up. I did not know him. He was a younger guy, looked like a former analyst. "She is telling the truth," he said, his voice shaking but clear. Everyone turned to him. "My name is Derek Cole. I used to be on the acquisitions team at Archer Point. I was a guest tonight." He looked at Ethan, and his shaking stopped, replaced by a sudden, hard anger. He fired me 6 months ago, with no severance, because I asked too many questions about Gray Line Holdings. I kept asking why we were paying them $10 million a quarter for data that was just recycled public information. Now I know. Holy hell. Now I know. The room was no longer divided. It was consolidating. A new narrative had formed, and I was not the only one who had a piece of it. Ethan had created more victims than he could count. The air was not just shocked. It was dangerous. This was a crowd that was realizing it had been conned. Ethan, who had been standing silent, held by the invisible force of his own public execution, finally snapped. He had lost the investors. He had lost the legal argument. He had lost the data. So he went for the one thing he had left. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's lying," he bellowed, his voice raw, cracking with panic and rage. "This is all because of Vanessa. She is just jealous. She found out about me and Vanessa, and she's doing this to ruin me. It is just a woman being crazy. She is jealous." It was the worst thing he could have said. He had just confirmed, in front of 200 people, that the affair was real. He had just admitted his motive. And in doing so, he had instantly vaporized the last shred of his visionary CEO persona. He was no longer a brilliant tactician. He was just a man, a pathetic, cheating, cornered man, screaming at his wife. He had reduced his entire professional life to a base, ugly, personal motive, and everyone saw it. In the back, near Logan, I saw his +1, a young woman Logan had been seeing, a junior reporter for the Riversend Financial Journal. She was not filming, she was writing, her pen flying across a cocktail napkin, her eyes wide, not with horror, but with a kind of dark, electric glee. This was not a family drama. This was not a social column item. This was a cover story. This was a market scandal that would rock the city. I looked at Ethan. He was panting, his face red, his eyes wild, still locked on me, waiting for me to scream back, to cry, to make it a domestic fight. He still thought he was dealing with his wife. He thought he was in a fight about jealousy. How sad. I thought, the coldness settling back over me, a comfortable, familiar armor. He thinks he is handling a jealous wife. He is wrong. He is handling the lead witness in a federal financial investigation. I stepped back from the microphone, into the shadows of the tech booth. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Ethan's roar about jealousy was still echoing, a pathetic, animal sound. It was the last piece of confirmation I needed. He had just confessed his motive. I pulled out my phone. The light from the screen was a harsh blue in the darkness. I opened the encrypted messaging app I had installed 6 months ago. One contact, Nathan Cole. My fingers were cold, but they did not shake. I typed a single word. Start. I added the details. Grand Imperial Ballroom. He's here. Kingsley is here. And so are Harris and Davies from North Haven. I hit send. The signal. The green light. The reply came back in less than 10 seconds. Nathan was good. We see the live streams. It's all over the financial news feeds. The warrants for Archer Point and your residence are active. We are moving. I need you to hold him. Hold all of them. Keep them in that room. Give me 30 minutes. Archer, 30. We want to catch them all together. 30 minutes. He was not asking me to be a witness anymore. He was asking me to be the bait. He was turning my party into the world's most elegant holding pen. I put the phone in my clutch. A sudden, sharp wave of doubt hit me so hard I leaned against the wall. 30 minutes. This was real. This was not just a public humiliation, a professional unmasking. This was prison. This was the end of his life as he knew it, as I knew it. Had I gone too far, I am a person who deals in facts. But my mind was suddenly flooded with images. Ethan, on our honeymoon, carrying me across the beach. Ethan, in our kitchen, making coffee, passing me a mug and saying, "Go get him, Lore," the man who had, for a long time, been my best friend. The man I had loved. And then, like a chemical reagent, another memory dropped into the first, his voice. "Don't worry your head about it, honey. It's just complex. I'll handle it." His hand, covering mine, pushing the laptop closed. "You're too suspicious. You need to learn to trust me." And the final image, my signature, Lauren Archer, faked, and badly, on a document that would have made me the sole proprietor of a criminal enterprise. He had not just cheated, he had not just stolen, he had tried to frame me. He had used my love as his primary legal defense. The doubt vanished. The fear was replaced by a cold, sharp, clarifying anger. This was not revenge. This was survival. I stepped back out of the shadows. I walked back to the microphone. The room, which had descended into a chaotic buzz of whispers and people filming, went silent again. They were not done with the show. Ethan was standing near the head table, his face slick with sweat. He looked up, and when he saw me, his expression changed. He had exhausted rage. Now, he was going to try something else. "This is not about money," I called out, my voice strong. "Not really. And it is not even about her." I nodded at Vanessa, who was staring at her phone, her face the color of ash. "This is about risk," I said, my voice dropping, becoming the voice of the investigator again. "In my world, we analyze risk. Who holds it, who benefits, and who pays the ultimate price." I looked right at Ethan. "For 5 years, I was your partner. But in your final business plan, I was just your failsafe. You just told this entire room that this is about jealousy. You are wrong. This is about your signature, the one you faked, the one you used to put my name, not yours, on the offshore accounts designed to take the fall." The room inhaled. The investors, the bankers, they understood that. That was a line no one crossed. Ethan saw he had lost them, and so he played his last card. "Lauren." His voice was gone. No, not gone. It was transformed. The roar was gone, replaced by a soft, broken, desperate plea. It was the voice I had not heard in years, the voice from our first apartment. "Lore, please," he said, taking a step toward me. His hands were open. "Please, stop. This is a mistake. We can fix this." He was speaking to me, just to me, but the microphone carried his whisper to every corner. "Let's go home," he said, his eyes wet. "Just, let's talk. Privately. You don't want to destroy our marriage, do you? All of this, it's just a terrible misunderstanding." He was good. He was so good. For one agonizing second, I almost believed him. My heart, the stupid, human, foolish part of me, cracked. The memory of the sun in our kitchen, the life I thought I had, the life I had been planning this entire party to save. Before I knew the truth, I was not a machine. I was a woman, and I was in pain. My hand holding the mic trembled. And then, my phone buzzed in my other hand. A text, not from Nathan, from Logan. I glanced down. It was a notification. One new photo. I opened it. It was a picture, date-stamped, 2 weeks ago. It was Ethan and Vanessa, not at a conference, but at a resort. The Palms. They were walking away from the camera, toward a private cabana. She was in a bikini. He had his hand on the small of her back, his thumb hooked possessively into her bikini bottom. Logan's caption was one line. "He told me he was in Singapore. He didn't think you'd see this. I'm sorry. Lore. He told me to trust him." I looked up from the phone. The tremor was gone. The pain was still there, but it had a new, hard edge. "A misunderstanding," I said, my voice hoarse. I held up my phone. I walked to the tech console. I knew how to use the document projector. I placed my phone on the glass, on the 30-foot screens. The spreadsheet of death vanished, replaced by my phone screen, replaced by the image of Ethan's hand on Vanessa's skin. The room gasped. This was not a spreadsheet. This was not a signature. This was human. This was the gutter. And this, I said, my voice thick but breaking, is how you were preparing for your birthday. This is how you trusted me. This was 2 weeks ago, while I was at home, finalizing the seating chart for this party. Ethan froze. He had no words. He had been caught, not just in a financial lie, but in a human one. The crowd was done. This was the final, devastating proof. They were no longer looking at a drama or a scandal. They were looking at a fraud, a complete fraud, in business and in life. The social isolation was total. People were not just moving away from him. They were looking at him with pure, cold contempt. I looked at the clock on the tech console. 20 minutes had passed since my text. I picked up the mic one last time. I looked at my husband. "I am not just getting revenge, Ethan," I whispered, but the mic carried it. "I am saving myself. I am saving myself from the prison sentence you were signing my name to." He had nowhere left to run. And Nathan was almost here. He was cornered, a trapped animal, the resort photo, projected 30 feet high, was the final, visceral blow. The forgery had been clinical. This was personal. He had lost the data. He had lost the argument. And now he had lost all claim to any moral high ground. He was a fraud, and a cheap, common cheat. And so he did what all cornered animals do. He lunged. "She is unstable," he screamed. But this time, he was not just looking at me. He was appealing to the room, to the investors, to the senators, his eyes wild and pleading. "Can you not see? This is a mental breakdown. She is fabricating this, the pressure of her job. She has been paranoid for months. She's delusional." It was the classic, final, pathetic play, the crazy card. I said nothing. I just let his words, so full of manufactured panic, hang in the air. I let them contrast with the cold, hard data still glowing on the screens. Spreadsheets are not paranoid. Forged signatures are not delusional. "Manager," he roared, spinning around, looking for a new target. "Hotel manager, get over here." A terrified-looking man in a tuxedo scurried toward him. "Shut this down." Ethan jabbed a finger at the tech booth, at me. "Cut the power to these screens. Turn off her microphone. This is my party. This is harassment. My guest, my client," he gestured at Vanessa, "is being defamed." The manager looked at me, then at Ethan, his face a mask of professional misery. He was trapped between a prominent client and a public explosion. "Sir, Mr. Archer," the manager stammered. "Do it now. I am paying for this," Ethan yelled. "Actually," I said, my voice calm, but the microphone carried it. "He is not—" Ethan stopped. The manager stopped. The whole room looked at me. "The contract for the Grand Imperial Ballroom," I said, as if reciting a report, "along with all audio-visual services, catering, and security is in my name, Mrs. Lauren Archer." I let that sink in. I am the client, and I am the one who paid the deposit, all $800,000 of it. "That is our money," Ethan shot back, desperate. "Our joint account." "No, Ethan, it was not," I said. And this was the part I had been waiting for. This was the part he never saw coming. "It was from my savings, my personal account, the one you have never had access to, the money I have been saving for the last 10 years. From my salary at Vantage Trace, my ordinary salary." I looked at the manager, who was now looking at me with a new profound respect. "The party continues. Do not, under any circumstances, cut the power. Am I clear?" He nodded. "Once. Perfectly clear. Mrs. Archer, as you wish." He turned and walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone, his final lever of power having just snapped off in his hand. He was truly empty. He had no more cards to play, no more authority. He was just a man in a suit who had been exposed. He started to walk toward me, not fast, a slow, deliberate, menacing walk. The investors who had been holding him stepped aside. Logan started to move, but I held up a hand. Wait. He walked right up the steps to the tech booth until he was 3 feet from me. The whole room was silent. Watching. He was not looking at the crowd anymore. He was looking at me. His eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were dead. He leaned in, his voice a low, venomous hiss. Just for me. You have no idea what you have done. I did not flinch. You think you are so smart, he whispered, the smell of whiskey and panic on his breath. You think you are winning. You keep talking, Lauren, and you are not just taking me down. You will pull down half the people in this room. You will pull down North Haven. You will pull down men you cannot even imagine. You cannot possibly be ready for that kind of war. It was his last move, the threat, mutually assured destruction. He was telling me that I, too, would be destroyed in the blast. I leaned in, just as close, so my lips were almost at his ear. The microphone was still on. Logan, I knew, was in the aisle. His camera's boom mic pointed right at us. You are worried about who you can pull down. Ethan, I whispered, and my voice, a soft, intimate sound of pure contempt, filled the ballroom. After all this, you still think I do not know when you pulled me in. You think I did not know about the forgery. You think I did not know you were already using my name as your human shield. His face, so close to mine, crumpled. He had not realized the mic was hot. He had thought that was a private threat. He had just, again, publicly confirmed his intent. And that was when the final betrayal came. Not from me. This is unbelievable. It was Vanessa. She had found her voice. She had seen her opening. She was no longer the mistress. She was no longer the co-conspirator. She was the victim. She stalked to the center of the stage, grabbing the MC's microphone from the podium, her hands shaking but her eyes clear and hard. She was a shark, and she had just smelled Ethan's blood in the water. She was cutting him loose. Ethan, what have you done? She cried, her voice full of a brilliant, fake horror. What are these accounts, Greyline Forgeries? I am an investor. I trusted you. She turned to the crowd, to the VCs, to the senators. If there are any irregularities in Archer Point's accounting, I and Kingsley Ventures will be the first to cooperate fully with the authorities. My fund's decisions were based entirely on the financial data he provided. This fraud, it is all him. It was a masterful performance. A complete and total pivot. She was saving herself, but she had underestimated the man she was betraying. Ethan, who had been staring at me, blank-faced, turned. He turned and looked at Vanessa. His face, which had been pale with shock, suddenly flooded with a deep, dark, purple rage, the rage of a co-conspirator who has just been sold out by his partner. Cooperate, he hissed. He grabbed the mic from my console. You cooperate. You dare stand there and act innocent. He was stalking toward her now. You begged me to find a way. You were the one who was terrified. Ethan, stop, she warned, her eyes wide. She knew what was coming. No, you do not get to do this, he roared, and the whole room, the whole world, was listening. Without me, your precious, clean fund would have been fined into oblivion for that compliance failure 3 years ago. The one the SEC almost caught. I was the one who found a way to hide it. I was the one who saved you. He stopped. He was panting. And he had just confessed. He had confessed to conspiracy, to obstruction, to a separate and prior crime. He had just, in front of 200 of the most powerful people in the city, legally and financially tied himself to Vanessa Kingsley in an act of mutual fraud. Vanessa looked like she had been shot. She dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a thud and a blast of feedback. At the tables, the real movement began. This was not a social problem anymore. This was a portfolio problem. I saw investors dialing, not to their lawyers, to their traders. Sell, I heard one man hiss into his phone. Sell all of it. Short it. Now. Freeze all capital to Archer Point. Another was dictating to an assistant. Call an emergency board meeting. Now. Get our legal team on the line. The financial execution was happening. It was happening right now, in real time. Before the authorities had even stepped foot in the room, the market was rendering its verdict. I felt a strange, dual sensation. My heart was a stone, broken in two. The man I had loved was gone. He had been gone for years. This screaming, pathetic, criminal creature on the stage was all that was left. But alongside the pain, there was a profound, cold, and terrible lightness, a release. I had been carrying the weight of his lies for so long, and I had just set them all down. I looked at the clock on the tech console. 10:16 p.m. It had been 29 minutes since my text to Nathan, and right on cue, I saw it. Through the glass doors of the ballroom, at the far end of the lobby, the first, unmistakable, flashing blue and red lights, reflecting off the hotel's marble floor. Time was up. The first sound was not a sound. It was a color. A rhythmic, silent pulse of red and blue, washing through the tall, arched windows of the ballroom. It flashed across the crystal glasses, painting the white tablecloths, catching the terror in Vanessa's eyes. Then, the sound came. A low, distant, unmistakable siren, growing closer, and then another, and another, a chorus of them, converging on the hotel. A new kind of panic rippled through the room. This was no longer a live stream event. This was a crime scene. The hotel manager, who had been hovering by the main doors, stepped forward. He had clearly been waiting for this cue. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice surprisingly firm over the speaker system, which I had left on. "For your own safety, we ask that you please remain in your seats. The authorities are here to speak with the hosts of this event. Please, remain calm and stay in your seats." The hosts, plural, Ethan, who had been frozen in his rage, turned his head slowly toward the doors. He saw the lights. He heard the sirens. And then, he turned his head back to me. The rage was gone. The panic was gone. All that was left was a hollow, dawning, absolute comprehension. He finally understood what I was. Not a wife, not a victim, a witness. "Lauren," he whispered, and the name was a curse. "What did you do? What did you do?" I did not have to answer. The main doors of the ballroom swung open. It was not a raid. There was no shouting, no guns drawn. It was something far more terrifying. It was quiet. It was corporate. Nathan Cole walked in first. He was in a simple, dark suit, flanked by two other investigators, a man and a woman, both carrying briefcases. They moved with the unhurried, grim purpose of people who already knew they had won. They did not look at the crowd. They did not look at the screens. They walked directly through the parted sea of guests, their shoes silent on the thick carpet. They walked right past me, past Logan, and stopped at the foot of the stage, looking up at Ethan Archer, the man of the hour. Nathan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Mr. Ethan Archer?" he asked, his voice polite, as if he were asking for the time. Ethan was mute. He just stared. "Mr. Archer," Nathan repeated, a little firmer. "I am investigator Nathan Cole, with the Financial Supervisory Board. We have a warrant to search the premises of Archer Point Capital." He held up a document. "We also have," he continued, pulling a second document from his folder, "a temporary order for your arrest on the charges of securities fraud, felony wire fraud, money laundering, and signatory forgery." Each word was a nail. This is a misunderstanding," Ethan stammered, his hands fluttering at his sides. He looked around, at the investors, at the senators, as if they could help him. "It's a mistake. I can explain everything. Lauren, she's confused." Nathan Cole looked at him, his face devoid of all expression. "You will have every opportunity to explain, Mr. Archer," he said, his voice flat. "Downtown, with your lawyer present." He then looked past Ethan, to Vanessa Kingsley, who had been trying to edge her way off the stage, to blend into the decor. Ms. Vanessa Kingsley. She froze. Nathan did not wait for an answer. He walked up the 2 steps onto the stage and approached her. She looked like a deer, cornered and blinded. She thought she was safe. She thought her little performance of betrayal had saved her. Ms. Kingsley, Nathan said, holding out a different document. You are not under arrest at this time. However, this is a federal summons. You are named as a co-conspirator in the same charges. I suggest you find a lawyer. Your emails, as you know, were quite clear. Vanessa looked at the paper as if it were a snake. She made a small, choking sound and took it with a trembling hand. She had cut Ethan loose to save herself, and in doing so, had sunk them both. No, it was Margaret. She pushed through the crowd, her face a grotesque mask of tears and fury. She did not run to her son. She ran to me. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Lauren, stop this. Take it back. Her voice was a desperate, pleading shriek. He is your husband. You cannot do this to him. You cannot do this to your family. Tell them it is a lie. Tell them you were upset. Please, Lauren, please. I looked at her, at the woman who had watched me be humiliated 10 minutes ago and had smiled, the woman who had told me I was not good enough for her son. I pulled my arm from her grasp. Gently, I did not raise my voice. I am not doing anything to your son. Margaret, I said, and my voice was tired. I am just ceasing to shield a criminal. She stared at me, her mouth open, and for the first time, she had no words. From the aisle, Logan was still filming. His lens was not on Ethan anymore. It was on me, on Margaret, on Nathan. He was no longer gathering evidence of a crime. He was documenting the aftermath. He was protecting me, ensuring that no one could ever twist what was happening, that no one could ever say I had been violent or hysterical or had lied to the authorities. He was providing a clear, unblinking record. My witness, Mr. Archer, Nathan said, gesturing to the exit. Let's go. 2 local police officers, who had entered with the FSB, were waiting. But Nathan held up a hand. No handcuffs. Not here. He was smart. He did not want to incite a panic. He wanted a clean, quiet, surgical extraction. Ethan looked at me one last time. His eyes were empty. The man I had married, the man I had loved, the man who had tried to destroy me, was gone. There was just a hollow shell. He turned, slowly, and walked down the steps. The 2 investigators fell into step, one on either side of him. They did not touch him. They just walked with him. He was escorted out of his own 40th birthday party. He walked past the tables of his investors, the colleagues who had admired him, the politicians who had courted him. He walked past the $200,000 flower arrangements, past the champagne tower, past the cake he would never cut. He walked through the main doors, a ghost in a $1,000 suit, flanked by the men who were about to dismantle his entire life. It was not an arrest. It was a social execution, the quietest, most devastating death I had ever witnessed. The room was silent, watching him go. The sirens outside were the only sound. Nathan Cole lingered for a second. He looked at the chaos on the stage, at the stunned, ashen face of Vanessa Kingsley, at the sobbing form of Margaret Archer. Then, his eyes found me, still standing in the shadows of the tech booth. He did not smile. He just gave me a single, sharp nod, a nod of professional acknowledgement. Your part is done, Ms. Archer, he said, just loud enough for me to hear. We will take it from here. He turned and followed his team out of the ballroom, leaving me alone in the wreckage of the life I had just bulldozed. The party was over. It had shattered. The guests, no longer held by the manager or the authorities, were not leaving. They were lingering, standing in awkward clusters, whispering. The staff, the servers and bartenders, stood frozen by their stations, unsure of what to do. The music was off. The only sound was the scraping of chairs and the low murmur of 200 people processing a public execution. The air, once so festive, was thick with the smell of cooling food and shattered prestige. It was a graveyard of canapes and reputation. My mother was the first to reach me. She pushed through the crowd, past Margaret, who was now slumped in a chair, past Chloe, who was still staring at the floor. She did not say a word. She just wrapped her arms around me, pulling me away from the tech booth, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. I felt her hand on the back of my head, and I realized I was shaking, not from fear, from the release of 2 years of compressed, suffocating pressure. "You did the right thing," she whispered into my ear, her voice fierce and hot with tears. "You did the right thing, my brave girl." It was the first touch of the night that was not meant to control, or hurt, or diminish. It was just love. The hotel manager, his face pale but professional, approached us. He gave me a respectful nod. "Mrs. Archer," he said, his voice low. "The party is fully paid for, as you said. By you, we are at your disposal. How would you like this to end? We will follow your instructions. As the host..." The host? The word hit me. He called me the host. The bitter irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. For the entire evening, everyone Ethan, his mother, the guests had treated Ethan as the host, the center of this universe, the man whose gravity held us all in orbit, but he was not. The contracts, the planning, the money, it had all been me. "This isn't your place." Ethan's words echoed in my head, but now they sounded different, not like an insult, like a miscalculation, a fatal error in his data. I pulled away from my mother. "Just a minute," I said. I walked. I walked past the shocked faces, past the whispers. I walked past Vanessa, who was being quietly spoken to by her own lawyer, a man who had seemingly appeared out of thin air. I walked back to the head table, table 1. It was a wreck. Napkins were crumpled, wine glasses overturned, and there it was. The chair. The one Ethan had given to Vanessa. The one he had been sitting in after his pathetic speech. The throne. The room went silent again, watching me. They had no idea what I was going to do. I pulled the chair out. The silk was cool. I sat down in it, the chair that was not my place. I sat there, at the head of the long, empty table, and looked out at the ruins of my husband's life. I reached for the microphone he had left on the table. The feedback squealed for a second, and everyone flinched. I leaned in. "Earlier tonight," I said, my voice soft, but it carried to every corner of the silent, broken room. "My husband told me, 'This isn't your place.'" I looked at the faces staring back at me. Investors, bankers, his family, my family. "He was half right," I continued. "This was never my place, because my place is not next to a man who would sell me out to save himself. My place is not next to a man who would use my love as a legal shield and my trust as a weapon." I looked at table 4, where Margaret and Chloe sat, isolated. I want to repeat this in front of all of you, so that no one ever gets this story wrong. I did not destroy this family. I simply refused to let it continue to exist based on fraud and on crime. There was a movement. It was Chloe, Ethan's sister. She stood up, her hands visibly shaking. "Lauren," she said, her voice a thin, trembling thread. "Lauren, if you need a witness for what he was doing at the company, the things he made us sign off on, I'll talk. I'll testify." Her eyes filled with tears. "I am so tired of pretending not to see." I looked at her, the girl who had looked at me with pity and amusement just an hour before. I did not smile. I did not invite her for an embrace. I just gave her one. Slow nod, acknowledgement, not forgiveness, not yet. I turned back to the microphone. I was the host. It was my party. I would be the one to end it. "Instead of celebrating Ethan Archer's birthday," I said, my voice clear and final, I want to thank all of you for inadvertently serving as witnesses to the truth tonight. The party is over. You can all go home now. I will stay and settle the rest of the bill with my lawyers." It was a dismissal. The dam of silence broke. People stood, not speaking, just grabbing their coats, their bags, their wives' hands. They filed out of the ballroom quickly, not looking at me, not looking at each other. They just wanted to escape. The sound of 200 people leaving was like a great, sighing tide, pulling all the energy from the room. I watched them go, one by one, until the room was empty, except for the staff, and the wreckage, and Logan. He had stopped filming. He walked over, his face unreadable, and just stood by the table. He put his hand on my shoulder. I stayed there, in that chair, for a long time, just looking at the empty stage. The screens were black. The flowers were wilting. Finally, I stood up. I looked at the stage one last time, at the spot where Ethan had stood and lied, at the spot where Vanessa had betrayed him, at the chair that had started it all. "Whether it's my place or not," I said, this time just to myself. "From now on, I am the one who decides." I turned my back on the ballroom. I walked away from the wreckage, past my brother, and toward the door. I walked out, carrying all the pain, but all the power, and the door swung closed behind me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to connect with all of you, so please, drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from, and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you want to support this channel and help this story be heard by more people, please hit that hype button.